Baker Mayfield coming off a personal best year in Tampa Bay and looking to build upon the Bucs' championship expectations, but it will be under new leadership. Former offensive coordinator Liam Cohen now gone to Jacksonville. So how will Baker and this offense fare under first-year new OC Josh Grizzard? We're back joined by Tyler Sullivan. Is Baker Mayfield expected to perform as a contract he's likely seeking in the future, but coming off a season full of career bests, passing yards, touchdowns, and completion percentage among other categories, Mayfield led the Bucs to the postseason the last 2 years, but their playoff ride is yet to extend past the second round. But Tyler, what do you make of Baker's chances of just replicating last year's success?
Well, I think we have to put in better context what last year's success was. 4,500 passing yards, 41 passing touchdowns. That's a lot. That is really just an unbelievable number, no matter who is. If that was Patrick Mahomes, if he'd be winning MVP. If that was Josh Allen, he'd be even more of the league MVP. So that's kind of a huge number to say, oh, yeah, no problem. Baker Mayfield, he's just going to run it right back with 41 touchdowns and 4,500 yards through the air. So if I had to put this between a 1 through 10, being the 10 I'm the most confident that he does it again, I'm probably at like a 6.5 and a 7. Pretty good, but overall, that is a huge number. Do I still think he can rival 4,000 passing yards? Absolutely. Can he throw for 30-plus touchdowns with the weapons that he has? There's no doubt about it. But the fact that they have a little bit more of a running game this year with Bucky Irving, I just feel like that could be a little bit tempered. They could be a little bit more balanced than we're accustomed to.
Okay, well, that's fair, but you talk about maybe some of those weapons, and I'm looking outside of that run game because he has a host of pass catchers to certainly help him along the way in year 3. You still got Mike Evans. He's leading the way, hoping Chris Godwin returns to form after that brutal injury he suffered last year. But how are you evaluating this Bucs pass catcher group that we're looking at right here?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how this all comes together because, of course, Mike Evans is the top dog there, 1,000 yards in literally every season of his career. We'll see how Chris Godwin develops. But even if Godwin is forced to miss some time, and I think they've afforded themselves the ability to slow play it with Chris Godwin because of the guys like Ibuka and Jalen McMillan, who had the most touchdown passes in the amount of stretch that he played last season down the stretch. So you have pieces in place to really be a prolific offense. And we're not even really accounting for Chris Godwin. One guy that I'm really interested in is Cade Otton, the tight end coming off of last season. That was pretty much his breakout, 600 yards receiving. It was a real force for them in the red zone. It felt like, even though the touchdowns don't really, point to that being the case, but he was someone who proved to be a force for them down the stretch, really a favorable target for Baker Mayfield. I referenced Bucky Irving. I think that he's really going to ascend as he comes into year 2. He was being compared to Adrian Peterson, if you look at some of his numbers last season. So there's a lot to like about this Buccaneers offense around Baker Mayfield. The question for me will be, does he have the protection to get the ball to those guys, because their star tackle Tristan Wirfs still dealing with injury?
Yeah, we might be missing him for maybe a bit of that opening part of the season. But like you mentioned, I mean, maybe those numbers not necessarily what we saw last year, but he still has that supporting cast to help him along the way. But meanwhile, defensively, they added reinforcements with the signing of Hassan Reddick after his lackluster and drama-filled, I think is a fair way to say it, season with the Jets. He's someone who had 4 consecutive 10-plus sack seasons before his stint in New York. But just what do you make of this marriage for both the Bucs and then also for Reddick, who's maybe looking for a bounce-back season?
Yeah, exactly. I think that we have to assume that we're not going to get 2024 Hassan Reddick. It seems like that's a thing of the past, because if we're getting 2024 Hassan Reddick, well, we can basically just pencil him as a non-factor here because he had 1 sack last season through 10 games. But if it's the Hassan Reddick that we've seen in the years prior, again, from 2020 to 2023, he had 50.5 sacks. That was the 4th most in the NFL. And he is now joining a Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense that had the 6th most sacks in the NFL last year, and they really haven't lost anybody. They still have Vita Vea, and now you add a guy like Hassan Reddick into this unit, we're talking about a pretty lethal pass rush. So when we talk about this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team maybe taking that next step in the NFC overall, you have to go through the likes of Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Jared Goff, the guys that we talk about as the elite quarterbacks in that conference. You now can send a little shiver down their spine because Hassan Reddick's screaming off the edge.
Yeah, it certainly helps when you have a little bit of that pressure coming off the edge when you're going against some of these top-tier quarterbacks in the NFC. But Vegas has Tampa Bay's win total set at 9.5 wins on the season. Now, this is a franchise that's coming off 4 consecutive NFC South titles, 5 straight playoff appearances. But does that continue in 2025? Are you taking the over or under on wins for the Bucs this year?
I take the over. I think that this could absolutely be a 10-7 team like they were a year ago. I think they got better in certain areas of the field, especially on the defensive side of the ball. You talk about, bringing in Hassan Reddick, and they do have a top 10 easiest schedule in the NFL. I don't think that's something that you should overlook. This is a relatively easy road for them. I think specifically at the end of the year. Yes, there's some pockets where you're facing, the Philadelphia Eagles, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Lions all within a month stretch. But you look at the end of the year, look at week 13 on, at home against the Cardinals, at home against the Saints, at home against the Falcons, and then you have a 2-game road stint, but it's at the Panthers and at the Dolphins. I don't know if those teams will be competitive, and then you wrap up the year against the Panthers. I think they could be favored in their final 6 games of the year. That includes those 2 road matchups. So even if you just stay afloat and you're a 4-win team heading into the final 6 weeks of the year, I think you could go on a run that gets you to 10 wins and surges you to another NFC South championship.
And maybe if the Bucs start out hot, maybe a couple of those surprises of one of those matchups you were talking about. You're looking at the Eagles, you're looking at the 49ers. Like you said, if you can stay afloat through maybe that first half, maybe 3/4 of that season, maybe could be clear coasting to yet another division title and a playoff appearance. As always, Tyler Sullivan, this is fun. Thank you so much. Well, Baker Mayfield looking to lead the Bucs to their 5th straight division title, 6th straight playoff appearance. Certainly can do so if he produces how he did in 2024. Tyler talked about these numbers: 41 passing touchdowns. That's the 2nd most in Bucs franchise history behind the GOAT. Talking Tom Brady, who had 43 back in 2021. The Bucs have discussed their intentions to extend Mayfield beyond his current deal, but hey, a strong 2025 could make that a reality sooner than later.